Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer Dark Money. I am Chris Clements, and my compatriot, Sean Noble, is not with me today. This is usually the day where we gather in our LBDM Cave at an undisclosed location to talk about the issues of the day, but also to review some videos that we call hot takes and give our views on what those videos communicate. And so that's what we're going to be doing today, because there's so much happening. I mean, what a crazy, incredible, amazing weekend for our country and also for the world. And things, as I even record this, are still transpiring. I have no idea what's going to even happen today. So we want to get to the news. We want to get to some other issues that are happening here in our fair city as well. We have one such video we're going to get to at the end. But right now, DC is still being cleaned up. And we are really amazed at how quickly this has happened over the last week. I mean, Donald Trump just a week ago basically said that he was going to clean up DC, call out the National Guard. And now you have different governors, like governor from West Virginia and also the governor from Ohio, sending their National Guard to D.C. to help clean it up. You have homeless encampments being completely razed within Washington, D.C. These are homeless encampments that were just on the mall or steps away from the White House, which begs the question, why didn't this happen years ago? Why didn't this happen years ago? D.C. is not really even a city. It's not a state. It will never be a state without a constitutional amendment. It's a federally controlled district. It gets nearly all of its budget from the Congress. And therefore, the Congress has a responsibility to make sure that it operates with cleanliness and with law enforcement. So this is great what's happening. Unfortunately, what you also have is the George Soros minions protesting what's going on, and we have some hot takes on that. So for those of you who can't see the video, number of people with signs saying F Trump and not in our city as the National Guard vehicles roll into Washington, D.C. And I've seen some video of people walking outside of Union Station, high-fiving National Guard troops. And there's a video of those same troops outside of Union Station. Union Station, and we can stop this. And Union Station, up till a week ago, had tents outside of Union Station with homeless people. And they've since cleaned that up. People would walk outside after catching a train to Union Station, let's say from New York City, and be accosted. Women were accosted forcefully, and that is ceasing to exist. What's really interesting is that there's been some polling that's been done. 90% of the populace of Washington, D.C. believe that crime is an issue. And even Democrats, then they don't want to go on MSNBC, which is now called MS Now, because they were being rolled off, and they don't want to go on and say that crime's a problem or that this is a good thing, but quietly they're absolutely cheering for what Donald Trump is doing in Washington, D.C. And the National Guard is part of that for protecting different parts of the city, empowering the D.C. police force to do their job without political ramifications, but also cleaning up the homeless encampments that were stationed on what is no more than federal land. So this is completely long overdue, and we're in full support of it. Now, the big news on Friday was, of course, Donald Trump's summit with President Putin from Russia and rolling out the red carpet, as to say. And we have a hot take on that.
Here we go, Andrew.
Here we go.
So we are now seeing President Trump come down the steps here, and it looks like moments away from President Putin. We are going to keep an eye on this. I just want to go out full right now. I'll keep an eye on the other shot here, but we want to take out full right now President Trump coming down the steps of Air Force One, and really the pressure that must be mounting on his shoulders, not only for the U.S.
Actually
side,
walking
but
down the
really
steps
for the
fully.
representation of Ukraine as well, coming down and trying to get some sort of deal done, or even just the working. So now here we go of President Putin coming down as well. Let's show you the side-by-side right now, Andrew.
So those of you who can't see the video, they're of course greeting each other. President Trump grabs President Putin's hand, pulls him in, big power move. And then you have the flyover here momentarily of the stealth bomber, along with some F-35 fighters. You know, there's been a lot of criticism about this meeting, but so far, even now here on Tuesday, it's borne a lot of fruit. And this was the first meeting that these two have had in over a decade now, and or nearly a decade. And you know, I think that the criticism by the press has been really laughable. And now you're seeing the okay, I don't think it showed it. It didn't show the F-35. Well, they're big power move by the president, you know, having some F-35s and the stealth bomber fly over them as they were walking to the stage. This was one meeting, and now it's going to become several meetings. Putin is not letting up on his, war against Ukraine at this point. But he did make several acknowledgments of what needs to happen for them to get to a peace deal. There was not a ceasefire deal that happened after this, which many people had hoped for. We're still hoping for that ceasefire, which needs to happen, because shortly after the summit, Putin launched a drone attack against Ukraine. But they are still in a state of war, and until there's an agreement, you're not going to see Putin back off, and that's just who he is. Make no mistake. I think there's a reality of understanding who Putin is, and that is a brutal dictator, but who wants to expand Mother Russia, but also is in a really precarious situation. His entire economy has been reworked for war. In order to back off of that, he is going to need the United States not to enact more sanctions against him. The United States has already enacted some sanctions against India for buying Russian oil. John McCain famously said that Russia is basically, a gas station with nuclear weapons. And in terms of their overall economy, that is very, very true. And they need markets to open. They need investment to come back into Russia. And I heard some commentary earlier today that I thought was really astute, and that is, you had not only Secretary Rubio there at the summit, but you also had Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and also the Commerce Secretary. And so part of what is going on behind the scenes is not just what's happening in Ukraine, but also how do you bring Russia back into the world economy. And if it's President Trump, he wants to do two deals. One, a peace deal, which he would get tremendous recognition for, and number two, an economic deal, which would be beneficial to the United States and our companies. So with that, it was announced shortly after the summit that there would be a meeting on Monday between President Zelensky, President Trump, and a number of European leaders. And what was interesting about that is the take that the press had on the European leaders coming to our country. And the take was that they were there to make sure that President Trump did not bully Zelensky, which is at this point is really laughable. But our own Secretary Marco Rubio had a really great take on that when he appeared on Face the Nation. And I don't know why he keeps going on there, maybe just to school her, but this is what happens.
Trump told Fox News his advice to President Zelensky is make a deal. Russia's a very big power, and they're not. You know, there's concern from the Europeans that President Zelensky is going to be bullied into signing something away. That's why you have these European leaders coming as backup tomorrow. Can you
No, it isn't. That's not why they're
them?
coming as back. That's not true. No, but that's not that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're
well,
not
that
coming.
February
in fact,
Oval Office
they're coming
meeting
here
in
tomorrow
front of television cameras where President Zelensky
Do you know how many meetings
was
we've
dressed
had
down.
since then?
Oh, no, I know, and I was just up in
Yeah, but we've had
Alaska
a bunch of
watching the
meetings
one
since
with
then.
Vladimir Putin where a red carpet rolled
No,
out
but
for the
with
Russian leader. It was
Zelensky, we've
very
had more
different.
meetings. We've had one meeting with Putin and like a dozen meetings with Zelensky. So, but that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're coming here tomorrow because we've been working with the Europeans. We talked to them last week. There were meetings in the UK over the previous weekend.
And they said President Trump was going to demand a ceasefire.
As early as Thursday. No. But you said that they're coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're not coming here tomorrow. Oh, this is such a stupid media narrative that they're coming here tomorrow because Trump is going to bully Zelensky into a bad deal. We've been working with these people for weeks on this stuff. They're coming here tomorrow because they chose to come here tomorrow. We invited them to come. We invited them to come. The president invited them to come.
But the president told those European leaders last week that he wanted a ceasefire. The president went on television and said he would walk out of the meeting.
You know, she's clamoring now, trying to keep the Democratic talking points going, and the simple fact is that diplomacy is messy and it ebbs and flows. And the fact that this meeting took place yesterday and was, by all accounts, extremely successful to the point where you had different world leaders, you know, heaping praise on President Trump for bringing them together, for getting Putin to the table to begin dialogue, whatever dialogue, however that takes place over the next several months, but to get them to a place where they can actually have some dialogue and put things in place for a lasting peace in Ukraine. Part of that dialogue is how do you enact security guarantees for Ukraine without them becoming part of NATO, which is a no-go for the Russians and has been a no-go for the Russians for the better part of a decade. So how do you, in turn, try to honor that if you want to, and still give Ukraine security guarantees from the European Union, from NATO, and from the United States? It's a big task, and that was part of their discussions yesterday. And one take that we saw was from the president of Finland, who contrary to narrative, had some glowing things to say about the mood at the White House. And this was on CNN.
So at one point in this meeting, you're in the room across from Trump. You're sitting next to President Zelensky. And Trump at one point calls Putin in a call that Russia now says was 40 minutes long. I'm so curious, Mr. President, was there any conversation in the room about that call? Did Trump talk to you beforehand about it or after he got off the phone with Putin?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, this was very much a day of Team Europe and Team US together supporting Ukraine. So first, us Europeans, we had a pre-meeting, and then after that, Zelensky had a bilateral meeting with President Trump. And then we spent the better part of 4 hours together with President Trump sussing out what we can do next. And one of the plans was for President Trump to tell President Putin basically what we had decided in the meeting. So yes, it was very coordinated and very constructive.
So you're saying that call, when the meeting sort of got paused, it sounds like what you're saying is because of the conversation that you're having in the room, that you all sort of said, okay, he said, all right, well, I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm going to go call him now. You guys were all in agreement with it. This is sort of how it sort of organically played out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so basically there were three outcomes of today. The first one was a good conversation on security guarantees. In other words, security guarantees by Europe and coordinated with the United States for Ukraine, and we start that work on concrete things immediately. The second one was a suggestion of a bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Putin, and that was what President Trump was testing with President Putin, and President Putin had agreed to do that meeting. And then the third step is after the bilateral meeting, if everything goes well, which is of course always a big if when you're dealing with Putin, there will be a trilateral meeting. So I think this was one of these meetings where we kind of took, 3 steps forward rather than any backwards.
All right.
Do you know
That's, there was also a recording of the president of Finland addressing President Trump during their back and forth at the White House, basically telling President Trump that they had not seen leadership like this from his predecessor. And this is what real leadership looks like. Like I said, diplomacy is messy, but the fact that all these European leaders came to the White House, came to some agreements, President Trump has enough confidence and enough understanding of the situation to be able to pick up the phone, his own phone, call Putin himself, push him to a bilateral meeting, which there was a pushing if it was 40 minutes, and then hopefully that can be successful to then get to a trilateral meeting. None of this was happening with the previous administration. Previous administration was absolutely okay with an endless funding stream to Ukraine, which has been fantastic for protecting that country and allowing them to stand on their own. But at this point, it's a stalemate. And Putin, however, has reorganized his economy to where he can push his advantage. I don't think Ukraine's going to get back the Donbass. I don't think it's going to happen. And I don't think Ukraine is going to be allowed to be part of NATO. I do think they're going to get security guarantees. I do think they're going to get a tremendous amount of economic investment to rebuild their country. So it's going to be very interesting the next several weeks to see what happens. We haven't, and I think Trump deserves a lot of credit for bringing everyone on board, getting everybody to an agreement, and pushing Putin to at least to move towards a resolution. Is he going to stop attacking Ukraine at this point? I think the next stage will be forcing some sort of ceasefire once that bilateral meeting is scheduled. And we're probably going to hear more about that today. And today's just Tuesday. So all this has happened in the last 4 days, which is incredible. None of this has happened in quite some time. All right, Alex, what else do you have in here? You have, this is what I was really hoping Sean would be here for, because it's something we've talked about in the past, and that's Trump has come out very forcefully against mail-in ballots, which is the cornerstone of our politics here in Arizona. So let's roll with that.
Well, Vladimir Putin said something, one of the most interesting things. He said your election was rigged because you have mail-in voting. He said mail-in voting, every election. He said no country has mail-in voting. It's impossible to have mail-in voting and have honest elections. And he said that to me. It was very interesting because we talked about 2020. He said, you won that election by so much. And that's how he got it. He said, and if you would have won, we wouldn't have had a war. You'd have all these millions of people alive now instead of dead. And he said, and you lost it because of mail-in voting. It was a rigged election. Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots. And we, as a Republican Party, are going to do everything possible that we get rid of mail-in ballots. We're going to start with an executive order that's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots because they're corrupt. And you know that we're the only country in the world, I believe, I may be wrong, but just about the only country in the world that uses them because of what's happened. Massive fraud all over the place. The other thing we want changed.
Now, where this pertains to Arizona is we have had mail-in ballots for years, and our mail-in ballot system is pretty secure. It works very well. Are there issues? Yes, there are issues. A lot of what you saw during the pandemic where laws were opened up in places like Pennsylvania and other states, you definitely saw some irregularities. It'll be interesting to see what this executive directive, this executive directive says, because when it comes to elections, it is clearly up to the states. And I think you're going to see a lot of states, both red and blue, some red states who use mail-in ballots, and they like Arizona. I would consider Arizona a red state overall, masquerading as a purple state. They're going to sue, and it'll be in the courts, and it won't be in time for the 2026 election. That's for sure. Are there things we can do to further secure and better secure our elections? Sure. One thing that we absolutely cannot allow to happen is ballot harvesting. I think if you were to ban ballot harvesting in many states that allow ballot, by mail elections, you'd solve a huge part of the problem. But we'll see what happens with this. I think the fact that he said that President Putin told him that he won the election by a long shot and it was the mail-in ballots, that remains to be seen. Although all those votes that voted for Biden somehow disappeared in the last election, so that your conspiracy theories can just go from there. But this will be a very controversial thing in terms of how our elections are monitored and how they're executed going forward. And I think we have one last one, and this kind of hits close to home. This is a report, expose report that was done by Fox News last night concerning All Saints Episcopal Day School, a school that I know quite a bit about, and this case of which I know quite a bit about. So let's roll that.
Tonight, troubling allegations involving a private school in Phoenix. Fox 10 investigator Justin Lum obtained a police report confirming a shocking incident at All Saints Episcopal Day School.
A sixth grader allegedly forced into a bathroom by older students who stripped him of his clothes. Parents question how this could happen on campus and if the school's response was enough.
The campus is pristine. A 15-acre property for a little more than 500 students in pre-kindergarten through 8th grade. Established in 1963 and located in Phoenix near Maryland and Central Avenues, All Saints Episcopal Day School boasts academic excellence, character cultivation, and community. The annual tuition, nearly $25,000. But parents say that price doesn't mean students are immune to bad behavior.
Is there a bullying problem school-wide at All Saints?
Speaking to other parents, from hearing about things that have been reported to the leadership, from the occurrences that have happened at school, it seems pretty obvious there is an issue of bullying at the school.
This mom has since withdrawn her children from All Saints for multiple reasons, including her concerns about bullying. We'll call her Jane as she wants to remain anonymous. She's not related to the students involved in the incidents investigated by Phoenix PD.
Right.
Here's what we know after obtaining the...
So there was an incident at All Saints last year, as outlined in this report, but this reporter is really lazy. This woman, her name actually is Pollyanna. I won't say her last name, but she is from Great Britain. She's a media influencer, and her children were young. She knows nothing about what really happened at All Saints, and she initiated a email campaign to try to do a number of things last year. And many of the facts that are displayed in the report with regard to this incident are missing several key points. And I'm not going to go into all those points, other than just to say that this woman has had it in for All Saints now for the better part of 6 months. I don't think that she withdrew her children from All Saints. I think she was told not to come back based upon her actions. The school dealt with this issue, I think, the best way it could. Many of the students that were implicated in this issue are no longer at All Saints. I know many of those families. This happened in the upper grades, and those individuals are going to have to deal with this now for several years. Nothing is always as bad as it seems, and the reporting has been exaggerated and not completely false, but not completely true. And this reporter and what he tried to gin up here with this one individual, with this one woman who wasn't even directly affected by anything that happened. All she was a concerned parent, and that's fine, but she doesn't need to make a federal case with all 500 parents there at All Saints. And that's what she tried to do last year. And she has since left, which is a good thing. I wish her well. And then we have one last one, which I have not seen.
Pissed off about this big, beautiful bill, but nobody's talking about the fact that you can now write off 100% of the cost of a private jet. So if you buy a $10 million private jet and you have, let's say, a 37% tax rate, federal tax rate, then you can write off 100% of the cost of that private jet and save $3.7 million on your taxes. Who wouldn't want that? Like, that helps literally everybody, and everybody benefits from this. And everybody just keeps complaining about everybody getting kicked off of their health insurance, and kids can no longer eat for free at school. Like, look, nothing is free. But everybody benefits when you can write off 100% of the cost of a private jet, as long as you can show that it's being used for business roughly half the time. The funny part is, if you own like a local HVAC business and you buy a new work truck, you have to prove that you use that work truck 100% of the time for work.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is the accelerated capital depreciation that was in the bill, which this individual is wrong about the work truck. You can, if you're buying a work truck with work funds, and you're buying it, not leasing it, you can accelerate that depreciation and get the vast majority of that back and write it off on your taxes. I think buying a $10 million airplane, if you have that type of money and you want to take advantage of that accelerated depreciation, accelerated tax write-off on the capital, hey, more power to you. But there's other parts of those investments that can be used within the big, beautiful bill that will do the exact same thing. New equipment, new plant, new capital formation. That is the crux of that bill, and it's a great bill from that perspective. And with that, we've come to the end of the hot takes moment here at Light Beer Dark Money. My name is Chris Clements. Thank you so much for joining us, and God bless.